And we're live.
What up?
That's right. I'm here with Jen Jacobs and Jason Kamsky, and we're here today to talk about strength. Specifically strength, obviously we're a CrossFit gym, so strength within the gym, within Old City, and then strength, just specific, like what specific cycles we're on and what we're doing currently. So I think I'll just kind of get started and ask you guys, like what you think the role of a strength program is in a CrossFit gym. Like why do CrossFit and have a strength component? Why not just do strength or why not just do CrossFit?
Oh man, all right. Huge question. Well, on the most basic level, I mean, everybody knows that the goal of CrossFit is fitness, and within fitness, we're talking about strength, we're talking about power, we're talking about varying kinds of endurance, agility, coordination. Some of the things you don't see come up that often in a CrossFit gym, but everybody, everybody generally agrees that strength is the foundation of the pyramid, so to speak, right? I think that strength is more difficult to earn than various forms of endurance, and that all of the other things become easier, better, so to speak. You're growing the pie, you're growing the engine when your strength is greater. And yeah, I mean, it's just cool to be strong.
What's starting strength say? Stronger people are harder to kill.
Stronger people are generally more useful and harder to kill, and strength is the most important thing in human existence. And people would love to think that books and religion and sociability is all that matters, but in the final analysis, you're nothing but an animal, a physical animal, and strength is going to determine the quality of your life. I could quote that book all day. I'm going to leave that for the starting strength podcast.
I honestly wasn't sure where
I was going to stop. Well, chapter 1.
I wasn't sure when it turned into Jason's voice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Jim, what are your thoughts on that?
For me, I think of, with strength in CrossFit, I always think strength is the foundation. People think CrossFit, they think those sexy metcons of doing 2 to 4 movements as fast as possible. But I always like to think of how quickly I can pick up a barbell and how heavy I can, or how quickly I can pick up a heavy barbell, or how many times I can squat, or how much weight I can put overhead. So for me, it's like that's a foundation is how quickly I can move something heavy, and then that I know. Once I get stronger with those basic lifts, like anything overhead, squat or deadlift, is I see that transfer then to bodyweight movements, to other movements, and so I see those, maybe just 3 core lifts as the foundation, and then everything, improves, expanding, from that.
All things being equal, if you can squat 400 pounds, 50 body weight squats for time is going to be much easier than if you can't.
Yeah.
Yep. So, like I was saying, growing the engine, so to speak. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one thing that I really connected with in the level 1, the CrossFit level 1 cert, was that power time graph where they say over all time domains from 1 second, think like a box jump or like an explosive movement or a single squat or a push press or a snatch, right? Something like very, very quick. Those very, very quick movements have a ton of power, right? So if the time domain is 1 second, the power is, for everyone, much higher than the power output might be for a 5-hour marathon or a 5-hour, a 32-hour 100-mile race. 50K. So low power output, right, in the longer it goes, and there's high power output the shorter it goes. And each little area kind of has its different energy system, right? So like creatine, phospho, whatever, glycogenic,
glycolysis, oxidative.
Yeah. So each area, each time domain kind of has different energy systems. And so if all we do is 20-minute metcons, we're only working one energy system. Even if we add weight and do a lot of interesting and complex things in that 20 minutes, you're still just kind of working that oxidative energy system, right? So for me, I think it's really important to intentionally stress that, like, that 5 second, that power part of the curve, right? The very early part of the curve, and get strong. And I think the other reason why I think it's important to separate them is when you're lifting, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90% of your max, you want that to be pretty controlled and focused, right? Like technique wise. I don't necessarily, I know there's some workouts where maybe we'll do it, but like typically most of our weights in workouts are probably less than 70%. You know, like weight that you can move pretty consistently. So there's a pretty big buffer between, you know, failure of technique and like, anyway, you're within your capacity to make that movement. And so when we do strength, we're doing, you know, whatever, 5x5, 3x3, you know, whatever it looks like. And then you can just focus more on those single reps because you're much closer to the limits of your ability.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't want to be the first guy on the podcast here to be like, well, actually. But I think it's important for our listeners to know that everything you said was accurate. But, you know, for the sake of a strength conversation, it is important, I think, to distinguish between, you were talking about power output and strength, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, part of the goal of a strength development program is not always directly power output.
For sure.
But CrossFit is based on, doing more work in less time, so power,
Well, it's not necessarily directly linked. Obviously, strength and power are separate, but they're super related. And I think if you look at a lot of the stuff like the conjugate method and Louis Simmons, what he does at Westside is, you know, connecting power with strength.
Sure.
You know, like how quickly can you stand up? And I think that's where a lot of the banded squats and the chains and all that stuff kind of came from, is the idea that when you're attempting to develop strength, you also should be focused on, you know, power as well. Or, you know, you need both in order to be like real strong.
Yeah. Well, like you know, we were saying, you know, CrossFit views fitness as all the things, and I guess sometimes we use strong and fitness are interchangeable, right? And by strong we mean powerful, and strong and endurance.
So
the ability to endure,
like the way that I sort of think about the differences between strength and power, just like the nuance for like just the way that I look at it, it's like I can be like a snatch or a clean and jerk, right? Like I can snatch 150 pounds, and that's great, whatever. That's a very powerful movement, right?
Yeah.
But then I can be super strong and be able to overhead squat, say like 200 pounds, 300 pounds, right? So then there's a strength to power disparity. Let's say that I can snatch let's say that I can overhead squat 250, but I can only snatch 125.
Yeah.
Be like, wow, you really need to work on your power.
Sure.
Like you're strong, you're super strong, but your power is totally weak if you can't translate that strength into a snatch type movement.
Absolutely.
Like, is that kind of the distinction that works with you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about rate of force development. So, and I think you could argue too that, you know, in the state of nature, in our you know, paleo caveman world, power might be the more important of the two. You know, it's very rare that catching that supposed deer that we were all supposed to catch is going to involve, you know, the ability to squat 500 pounds, but the ability to jump and change direction and to develop force quickly.
So is it?
So, yes.
Is it fair to think about like from the base, like Jen, you were talking about like the base of what we do is strength, or strength is the foundation or whatever. Is it fair to think about it like the like my strength creates my power potential? You know, like I can't outpower my strength,
right?
But you know, I can be stronger than I am powerful, but I can't be more powerful than I am strong.
Exactly.
Like, I'll never be able to snatch 250 if I can't overhead squat 250.
Your clean is only ever a percentage of your deadlift, and your clean is only ever a percentage of your front squat. Right? You can never clean more than you can front squat.
Right. And so if I'm training, so like specifically at our gym, what we try to do, and like kind of the tactical aspect of this is developing both strength and power. So what does that look like?
Jen.
Oh, goodness.
You do the program.
Yeah.
How do we develop strength and power?
And power. One thing I've been finding is to help with the power is doing some the workouts that follow the strength is doing it based on percentages. Is trying to do lighter weights at heavier percentage. Let me say fewer reps at heavy percentage, and maybe even treat it as an EMO, a workout every minute on the minute. So for someone that might take, 30 seconds to do, 95% of their deadlift max,
right.
We're dropping them down just a little bit and making them do those 3 reps in 15 seconds, but then they're resting 45 seconds, get full recovery to help develop that power.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to, kind of echo that and our programming, I mean, how do we develop strength and power? I mean, you just need to look at the programming. Some days we're going to do a deadlift, and the goal is to show intensity. It's basically to show how much overall strength you have.
Yeah.
And then a week later, it's going to be a clean, and you're going to take the strength that you built deadlifting, and you're going to practice power output by cleaning it or snatching it. And then, some WODs, they come around and they're 3 minutes of cleans. And so,
You might also see, too, building on that, it's like if it's a deadlift, you might find that the workout that follows has either kettlebell swings or box jumps. So you're working on that explosive, that powerful, hip extension, that hip hinge movement that you just did, 15 however many times, 25 times in the strength, and here you are translating it to, high box jump.
And that's a good point. So the combination of what you see in strength and then what you see in the workout. So how do those two things kind of play together?
I like to think of the Metcon or the workout that follows as it sort of complements what you did in strength. So like I said, if it was a back squat, maybe in the workout we do wall balls or lunges, some single leg movement to still, build on that strength, but not completely, lose what you just
So if you
gained.
see some sort of squat in strength, you're probably going to see a version of some, perhaps like a wall ball is a power version of a squat, like accelerate up through an object, box jumps, goblet squats, air squats, that sort of stuff. Okay, so
Let me add just real quick. I mean, since this is our strength podcast, and next week we'll talk about pose running endurance or whatever, but this is the strength podcast. Our programming, the Next Gym's programming, starting strength, we all agree that all of these things are only, built upon strength, right? And I said that a moment ago in another way, but I think it's super important that our listeners realize that just the more that they can squat and the more they can deadlift or choose their strength movement, the better everything is.
Right.
You squat more, that 24-inch box jump becomes a lot easier than it used to be.
For sure.
Tilt that box up. Now you squat more because it's just more power.
Yeah, I mean, you watch the games athletes, you watch them do a workout like Fran, right? Like 95-pound thrusters for these guys who could probably do 200-pound thrusters is like nothing. It's like us doing Fran with a PVC pipe and jumping pull-ups because they're that much stronger, right?
Yep. And so when a client, we've had for a couple months isn't necessarily seeing the quantifiable improvements in WOD time, or maybe stuff like that. But the question becomes, well, how much attention are you paying to what weight that you squatted and deadlifted? Are you recording it? Do you have a good idea? Do you feel like you're trying very hard?
Right.
Or is and we could go down that wormhole. Is your technique limiting you, etc.? But the point being is that our clients, our athletes need to ask themselves every single time we do a strength movement, are we improving? Or at the very least, did we try? Because, sometimes, you didn't eat enough sweet potatoes and brown rice. Not my fault.
Oh.
Not brown rice.
Whoa,
white rice.
Whoa, come on now.
The day before.
Did you hold 30 and then phase out and then
some days
test grains?
You can't go up. You can't go up every single day.
Yeah. Well, you touched on something that's really interesting. So, like, kind of the arc of someone who's getting started with CrossFit is they show up and every movement's new. And you mentioned something that I thought was really powerful. This concept of being technique limited, right? Like when you're first starting CrossFit, it's not like just going from not that everybody who starts CrossFit is like going from a couch to a gym, but like that concept of like if you go from doing very little functional movement strength training to doing anything, you're going to get stronger, right? You're going to make improvements. So that's why a lot of us, or all of the coaches in at our gym, our primary focus for that probably first 3 months is just technique, range of motion, right? Let's get you squatting to full depth and let's make that squat look as beautiful as possible, because only on the backs of great range of motion and great technique can we build and develop sustainable strength, right? Like strength that's not going to get you injured.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
And so, like, what I like to see when athletes are getting started is just blind focus on just technique and like whatever the rep scheme is on the board, and you know, coaches are pretty good at doing this. Whatever the rep scheme is on the board, it might be like 5x5 or build up to a heavy 5 or let's do a 1 rep max. If you're just getting started with CrossFit, it is totally fine to do, you know, 5x10,
Yeah.
you know, 5x15, and just put a barbell on, slowly add weight. You're going to get a lot more out of it in the long run if you're focused kind of just blindly on great technique.
Yeah.
And then figuring out what's limiting better application of technique.
I think that's why CrossFit is such a valuable service, is because, you know, our coaches, I can't speak for every CrossFit gym, but our coaches just do such a good job of catering the system to what is appropriate.
Right.
You know, and so I know we got to get into the current strength programming, but right now you're going to see a lot of work to a heavy 5, work to a heavy 3 during the strength period. And, you know, that's a great way to get strong for, you know, even kind of the very front, the entry-level intermediates, basically. Not beginners, but just verging on that intermediate level. But a lot of times beginners, assuming, all things being equal, beginners do need those reps, right? They need their central nervous system just to get used to that movement. And our coaches do such a good job of saying, you know, heavy 3, maybe not for you today, but what we're going to do is we're going to work this mobility, we're going to work this range of motion, and that's invaluable for both strength development and injury prevention.
I think that's the most important thing, especially if you're just getting started with any strength training program, is that you're going to be stronger in the long run. Like every good gym is playing the long game, right? Like we don't look at you as a member who's going to be here for a month. We look at you as a member who's going to be here for a decade, right? Like we might be having you work on your hip range of motion or your flexibility. And I mean, you might have the strongest quarter squat in the world, but we're trying to develop over time a really strong deep squat. So, you know, a lot of our focus in the very beginning, technique, drilling reps, working on range of motion. So let's assume that you sort of, you know, maybe you're shifting to that athlete who's been doing, you know, CrossFit or strength program, we'll say in that like 3 to like 6 month range. Technique's pretty good, you know, it can always get better, right? Greg Glassman's virtuosity thing, right? Like you can always do a better air squat no matter who you are. You can always focus on technique. So, but your technique's pretty good, your range of motion's pretty good, and now you're starting to build up in that weight. So what does that journey look like? Like what are you looking for? What are you thinking about? What are you tracking? How would you attack like you know, our strength programming if you were that athlete in that kind of 3 to 6 month, you know, 3 month to year long range?
Are we talking about what we're transitioning to, or what we've been
just in general, right? Like if you just joined a random gym, you know, and you're just following their strength programming, regardless of what the strength program is, you know, like what's your focus after you kind of transition out of that technique range of motion phase?
It's like you're finally getting it. Everything.
Yeah.
For me, it's writing everything down.
Yeah.
I mean, at least strength, keep track of your numbers, not just what you finish at, what your heavy 3 or 5 is, but what weights you use building up there. Because then you can maybe next time start 5 pounds heavier each time. So you're not just seeing that end goal, you're seeing what it took to get there. Maybe you were just starting with a 65 pounds. Now 95 is your starting weight.
So you're writing down warm up weights?
I warm up. I write down warm ups, how many reps I do, because sometimes I start with 5s, even if it's heavy 3s.
That means that means you're doing warm up.
she would hate to come to the evening classes because we go through the, for example, the group warm up, and
should I put my
it'll
earmuffs
be
on?
like a wall walk, 5 squats, and 10 burpees.
Oh,
and I'll go stand over somebody and be like, "It's the warm up. You better do all 10."
Oh, and there's only like a third of the people in the morning versus the evening sometimes.
Yeah.
You got a little bit more time. But I think it's also they've been sleeping for 8 hours, so it's like kind of get the cobwebs off, and everyone's been moving.
I think the distinction Jen made is just crucial, and I think our listeners and our athletes should understand that there's a difference between exercise and training, right?
And there's nothing wrong with either.
Yeah,
but there's a difference.
A lot of these hour-long classes that are high intensity, they're exercise.
Yeah.
Are you going to burn some calories? Sure. But are you training to be here for a decade, or if we're talking about being prepared for life, the rest of your life?
Right.
And so Jen, I think she takes it to the next level by tracking those warm-up weights. But I personally think
Next level gains.
I think that most people can get by, but I can't understate the importance. But they can get by just tracking the end weight, the reps and how much they did.
Yeah.
So long as that top end continues to improve over time, not every day, not every week, but over time. That's for sure what that intermediate person needs to be looking for is improvement.
I mean, at a minimum, we're talking like this is a 2.0. 2.0 is writing down your last set reps and weights, right? Now we're moving into like C plus, B territory. You're writing down every training set and reps. And then maybe like A minus is like maybe there's like little notes like felt really good.
Yeah.
Here's where
I do
my
that.
chest did.
I do that, yeah.
Like one thing that I record, I'm probably in that C minus D plus category. That's just where I live as a student. But I do record. So I basically record like my PRs and like my where I go in strength training or whatever. And one thing that I like to do is if I hit a PR or if I do a lift and it's super sloppy, I'll just put a note and say that it was a really sloppy PR, right? Like whenever we did the total, 6 months ago, like 315 back squat. I know, like settle down out there. 315 back squat, big time. And but it was ugly, and like my chest was falling, and like it was just totally like disgusting form. But then I did 315 maybe like 3 months later. Chest more upright, knees weren't caving in, back wasn't like totally rounded, and it was like, oh, well, that was definitely a PR. I lifted the same weight, but I did it with much better technique.
Yeah,
that's a PR.
I mean, that's crucial. There's different kinds of people out there, and I think at our CrossFit gym, we try to cultivate the kind of athlete who wants a technical PR and not just a PR. And the distinction there is that, maybe I snatched 195, but I kind of pressed it out and I took those like 4 walking steps forward, and then I wasn't able to do the jig with the pose.
Did you see that?
Got a strike.
Did you see that meme? Did you see that meme on Facebook or something where the guy does a snatch and like does a few like running steps, and then now he's like running out of the gym and he's like running through the parking lot, and then he like makes his way back in the gym and he like nails the lift.
My favorite one was I think I shared it on the website. He was on the platform and he jerked it. And he just kept spinning.
That's right.
Like he couldn't stop the momentum.
That was a real one, though.
That was absolutely real,
yeah.
But, we try to cultivate the kind of person who's going to say, sure, that felt good, and now I know that I built some confidence and I'm kind of capable of it.
Right.
But you continue to demand that virtuosity, that
For
perfection.
Sure. I'd rather see a perfect 200-pound deadlift from any athlete than a super sloppy like 500 like oh no double checking they signed the waiver type deadlift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's the difference between strength until you're 25 and strength until you're 80.
And and there is something to be said for every now and again just going for it, right?
Sure.
Because you're never going to know that you can't lift 500 until you try to lift 500 and fail. Yeah. But it's cultivating the proprioception as an athlete to be able to like start the lift and be like nope, everything went wrong. Right. Everything went wrong.
And that's a great point. I think transitions into our current programming, which is that we're trying to cultivate intensity as well, right? Virtuosity and form, we all agree, comes first. But strength gains are dependent on intensity. You talked about, your level 1 cert, and I remember at my level 1 cert, they said, Coach Glassman always said, be impressed by intensity and not volume.
Right.
And one of the reasons that I think that, our current plan of working to a heavy 3, heavy 5 is going to be successful is because instead of, it gives everybody an opportunity every day, assuming they're not a beginner and we're working with mobility and reps and whatnot.
Right.
It gives every other athlete a chance to display that intensity. And we're going to pull them back and we're going to say, that front squat became a shitty back squat thing.
Right.
And your wrist almost fell off. But it gives everybody a chance to get strong. And I think that's super doable in a 1 hour CrossFit class. I mean, part of the issue with strength training is that how much can be accomplished in a 1 hour class, especially with appropriate coaching.
Right.
And I think if we give people a chance just to work to a heavy set as opposed to demanding the volume, they're going to see success.
Yeah, for sure. And I think and we touched on this earlier, but it's, kind of up to the coaches and up to the athlete to figure out exactly where you are. If you're just getting started, a heavy 3 may not be in the cards, right? Because you put 135 pounds on the bar and everything goes to the wayside, right? Like you're no longer getting full depth. Your knees are caving in on the squat. Your back is running on your deadlift. The bar is super far forward in Olympic lifting. And so it's part of understanding, what our goal is ultimately, but also understanding where you are in that journey, right? So if you're in that 3 month point and you're really into it and you're getting stronger, it is totally appropriate to pull back the throttle, stay 50, 60, 70%, maybe not build up to a heavy 3, but get to a medium heavy 3 and just do sets and sets and sets and sets and building that nervous system, building and grading those movement patterns, building the base, and just getting reps in, right? That's totally fine. But if you've been doing, CrossFit for 4 years and you're still doing that, maybe we should talk about that, right? Let's get more weight under the bar, or let's figure out what's been holding you back that we haven't been looking at for the past few years, right? Because this is what I tell people in the intro session. If you can't do something perfectly, if you can't perform an overhead squat perfectly, it's because of one of 3 things are missing. No one ever taught you the technique, right? You just don't know, where do I move my knees? What do I do with my hands? So you don't know the technique, right? But most people, after a few cues and tips, they can pick up the technique pretty quick for, squats and, basically everything outside of Olympic lifting, right? The 2 biggest restrictions that we see in the gym are lack of range of motion and lack of strength. Right, so if you're missing range of motion, I don't care how much I yell at you, I yell, how much I tell you to get deeper. If your hips don't get deeper, your hips don't get deeper, right? So, and then the other thing that we see is just lack of strength. So if you're back squatting, 315 and your chest totally rounds over and your back rounds and your knees cave in, well, that's a sign that something in your body isn't strong enough, right? Accessory movements, maybe your abs aren't strong enough, maybe it's your abductor, who knows? We got to see how you move to figure out where the weakness is. But part of the job as the coach is to assess the way that you move and figure out the limiting factor of that movement, pluck it out, and then fix it, right? So maybe your limiting factor is technique. You have the range of motion and you have the strength for, a barbell. Let's just drill that technique. Cool. Well, we're going to drill the technique. But this guy over here has tight hips, so in between sets, we're going to work on the hips. This guy over here has weak abductors, so we're going to put the hip circle on and do abductor exercises. I think it's, it really is a puzzle of figuring out, we as the coaches and hopefully you guys as the athletes have the mental imagery of what perfection looks like, right? Watch Olympic lifters Olympic lift, and now you see what perfection looks like, and it's our job to help get you to moving in that capacity by figuring out what's holding you back and then fixing it. And on a global scale, and we'll kind of get into kind of how we program strength and how we program in the gym, globally. On a global scale, our goal is to say how does most of the gym respond, right? How does 80%, 70, 75, 80% of the gym respond, and how can we move the bulk of the gym forward in a certain direction? Okay, so, you were talking about endurance or running. We might do a quarter where it's just a ton, we're trying to move everyone's 5K time to be super fast. And then we show up at a turkey trot and just drop the mic.
Yeah.
But for the next 2 months, so it's January. For January and February, the goal of the gym is to really focus on Olympic lifting. And we kind of touched on why Olympic lifting is so important earlier, because it's the optimal expression of power, right? The snatch is the most efficient, most powerful way to get something from the ground to overhead. The clean, same thing, but to your shoulders, and the jerk from shoulders to overhead, right? So it's the maximum expression of power, and I think it's probably the most technical thing that we teach. It's the hardest technique. It requires the most range of motion, and it requires a ton of strength. And so January comes, and I figure no better place to start than with the hardest thing that we do.
Yeah.
And so from my perspective, that's kind of why we chose Olympic lifting for January and February.
Just as strength is the basis for power. I don't know, just as it's not a direct analogy, but basically, if you can snatch well, nothing else we do in the gym is going to be that hard. And
Relative to that, for sure.
It's demanding a lot from our athletes, for sure. It's demanding all those things you brought up: mobility, range of motion, strength in range of motion, patience. It requires all those things. So it's
learning how to use your hips, like jumping mechanics, landing mechanics, athleticism.
General speed. Yeah.
Really, like, to me, it's one of the most important movements to continuously practice and continuously get good at. And, obviously we're a CrossFit gym, so we advocate for people, joining gyms. But like, you can teach yourself to squat pretty easily by watching YouTube videos, going to a gym, getting on Mobility Wide. Like, you can acquire the skills of squatting. I'm sure you can also acquire the skills of Olympic lifting outside of a gym, but it is so much faster when you have a coach saying, that's the mistake. That's the mistake. Yeah. This isn't good enough. We need to work on the shoulders. And so when, January comes, a lot of new people come in the gym. Olympic lifting exposes so much of an athlete, right? Like, I can watch you overhead squat. That tells me a little bit. I can watch you squat snatch, and that tells me everything I need to know, right? Squat snatch a PVC pipe, and basically I know what we're working on for the next 6 months.
If you can do a well-executed barbell overhead squat or squat snatch, as it were, you've got enough mobility to do pretty much anything you need to do in this world.
For sure. 100%.
So, yeah, absolutely. It's a good time to be at Old City.
Yeah. So, Jen, any thoughts on why Olympic lifting?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, it's might as well start at the top and work our way down. And I think for the current members that have been doing the program we've been, or at least been here the last 6 months to a year, where we've been doing back squat, deadlift, bench press. And then we'd alternate every week, either a snatch movement or Olympic lifted movement, and then follow that up with front squats. It's like there's a good foundation of strength.
For sure.
So it's like, but we didn't spend as much on doing Olympic lifts. Like I said, once a week, but we try and alternate some sort of clean or jerk movement with like an overhead squat or some sort of snatching movement. And I don't think we spent as much time on it as it needs. So it's good to kind of bring it to the focus. Not that we're putting everything in the back seat. Yeah, we're going to be doing some more, back squat and deadlift and getting those in, but spending a little bit more focused time on the big lifts.
I think it's literally a subtle difference between the strength programming that we did in 17 and what we're starting off in 2018. I think what's important that people understand about strength training is that, there's no need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
It's not like just at Old City CrossFit we're going to come up with some weird version where we're going to hold a barbell like a spear overhead in one direction or something, or we spin the barbell around our neck. Well, a squat's a squat, and a squat is what makes people strong.
But if you're super new to strength training, we invented 5x5.
We did invent yes.
We invented that.
We invented
That's
the
ours.
back squat, yeah.
Yep. So that's us. When you go to another gym, be like, oh shit, they copied Old City.
So what I'm hoping for 2018 is that you'll see weightlifting at least once a week, and we might, and by weightlifting I mean
deadlift, back squat.
No.
Oh,
yeah,
lifting,
so everybody knows. Yeah, weightlifting is the Olympic sport. So one might think that everything we do in the CrossFit gym is weightlifting, but when I say it means snatching and clean and jerking. But whatever. That's Professor Boring over here.
No,
the obvious. Yeah. Point being is that I don't think we're going to see that much of a change in programming because we still need to include the squat. We still need to include the front squat because your snatch and your clean and jerk is only ever, as I said, a percentage of that. Your power can never, or the weight you can lift powerfully can never exceed the weight you can lift slowly.
Right.
So.
And that's a good point because, I think the difference between the overall goal of our strength program in the gym is to get you stronger, get you more powerful. And in the process teach you how to lift and how to get stronger, how to get more powerful.
How to move, yeah.
So that was the goal for the vast majority of 2017, right? Like, let's just build a really strong base. Now what we're doing is we had the same goal, right? Like, let's get stronger, let's get more powerful. We're just like tiny little tweaks, like a little tiny shift towards Olympic lifting, a little tiny bias towards Olympic lifting for the next 2 months. Let's push the gym towards improving Olympic lifting.
Yeah.
Let's push the gym on a very slight power focus, if you will, and then let's get everybody in this. So on March 3rd, we're doing an Olympic lifting meet. We're going to do it just like they would in the competition. You get 3 lifts, all the rules. We'll explain it, in due course. But let's get the whole gym by March 3rd with really solid percentages, like really solid maxes for where they are with snatch, where they are for clean and jerk. And then we're going to focus on something else for a while, develop more strength, develop more power, do that. And that way when we come back to Olympic lifting in 6 months and, whenever we come back to it, not that we ever leave it, but whenever we refocus on it, then we can start to see like massive jumps in PRs. That's when you start seeing someone go from, like 150-pound snatch, which is like pretty legit, to like 200. Where'd that come from?
Oh, it turns out my snatch grip deadlift went up 100 pounds. So yeah, yeah, and like you said, they're never really going to go away. I mean, at some point, these movements are fundamental to strength training and they're fundamental to CrossFit, so they can't disappear completely. But just so everybody knows, what an example of a change they might see is today's programming Friday.
Absolutely.
We've got maybe instead of doing bench press, we're going to do push press, which works the overhead range of motion, which clearly weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, involves a lot of overhead. And then we also are including snatch grip deadlifts, which it's a deadlift. There's weight on the ground. You're going to grab it and you're going to stand up. But we're going to grab it wide for the first time in our gym. We're going to focus on keeping our chest up. And we're going to act like we're snatching it. It's just not going to actually be snatched, So it's little subtle differences like that.
And then I think the other thing in the programming like we have today is typically the way that it works is we do like a 15-minute warm-up, 15-minute strength. I mean, this is very, global kind of blocks that we have lined up for the gym. 15-minute warm-up, 15-minute strength, 15-minute workout, 15 minutes cool-down mobility. Now, any given class, that's going to be adjusted. Maybe it's a 30-minute workout and we don't do strength. Maybe, things run a little long and we don't have enough time for mobility. Maybe we cut warm-up short or make warm-up longer. But anyway, that's the general idea. What we're going to start doing for the next few months is one day out of the Monday through Friday week, we're going to dedicate the whole day to strength, right? Now, that's not going to mean that we're just doing 5x5 and that's all that's happening. It'll be kind of like what we see today where there's like a 20-minute EMOM, or I forget exactly what it is, but, a 20-minute EMOM where every other minute you're doing max effort, or you're doing 5 lifts at 90%, or, whatever it is, we're going to build the volume, build the strength, but in the context of like planning a whole hour around it as opposed to having to save 25 minutes to prep and execute a Metcon, for example.
Yeah, no, I think since we spent this whole time talking about strength and why strength is important, we need to realize that, strength takes time. And, always the issue with coaching CrossFit is that fundamentally it's a 1 hour class, right? And we just view that as the amount of time that is appropriate for people. We can give them a lot of fitness in 1 hour, and then we also want them to go out there and live their life.
Yep.
But it just so happens that being truly strong sometimes takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So in the programming, just like yesterday, you'll see plenty of long WODs for those people out there who want to just feel their lungs burn and all that stuff. But we decided that once a week, we're just going to spend time getting strong. And, in a 1 hour class that also includes a WOD, truly getting to that heavy weight or hitting that amount of volume is just super difficult.
Right.
And so I hope people understand that the reason that we're doing the dedicated strength day is so that they can lift heavier.
Yeah, and this is a super important point. To me, it's really important to understand that what's the purpose of training, right? A lot of people have this idea that if their heart doesn't explode, they didn't get a workout in, right? the whole purpose of training is to like provide an immense stress on the body so that the body over recovers. So like if I do nothing over time, my muscles will atrophy what little of them I have, and then I become even weaker, right? But if I'm constantly lifting up heavy things, then my body's going to adapt to that, and over time it's going to get stronger. So when we do the metabolic conditioning, the metcons, right? Like whatever, a lap around the block, 25 box jumps, 20 burpees, like 18 rounds of that.
We know metcons,
right?
Yeah.
So what? Well, somebody in our community group had to Google. I remember when I first started CrossFit, I was like Googling every term. I remember Googling Turkish get up, and I was like, what
is that?
They want me to do what? Anyway, what was I talking about? Metcons. So like metcons, certainly they're gonna make your heart explode. They're gonna make you feel really tired. They're gonna push you to the limits. And that's a really good stress on your cardiovascular system. Really good stress on a lot of different components of your body, and it's super important for health. But on the other end of the spectrum, so is just getting under a lot of weight for a long time, right? Like 10 by 10 back squat with 18 minutes rest between each set is a brutal workout. Like you might not be breathing hard by the absolute end of it because you had so much rest in between, but your body was so taxed because of that, right? And so like what we're looking for in these, strength days is to like absolutely crush like the central nervous system, crush, like all of the muscle groups that we're working, and so that when you go to bed, you wake up, everything that we worked gets a lot stronger. And so if you leave the gym feeling energetic after a strength workout, give it a day, go to sleep, wake up, see how you feel.
Yeah, I think we talked about teaching people mobility and range of motion and virtuosity, and these are all incredibly important. And I don't know, like I feel like somehow I got a little bit of a reputation at the gym as being the guy who walked around with like 10-pound plates and just like when people weren't looking, putting them on. And we would never ever do that for anybody who was at any kind of risk or was learning the movement or whatever. But at a certain point, I also feel like I'm a coach of the spirit. Right? Like my favorite Ripito quote is that 135 is never easy until 225 is hard. Right? And if you keep doing 135 over and over, another way you can read that is I keep doing metcons at the same weight over and over and over. It never gets easier.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes, you just got to put a couple more pounds on the bar.
Yeah.
And range of motion is truly paramount. But maybe you hit just parallel one time instead of all the way down. But psychologically and in terms of, just your spirit, and by spirit I mean obviously just your willpower. Yeah. Just the confidence to know that you can do that weight, that's crucially important. Which goes back to Jen's point about tracking things, right? Track. And if you keep seeing 135, 135, 135, maybe one day you just got to put that plate on, man.
Or if you come to one of us, and you're like, man, I've been doing this for a few months and I just haven't really seen much progress in my strength. Cool, show me your numbers. Show me your book. Where are we at?
Yeah.
What have we been doing? Oh, you're not tracking? Well, let's start there.
That's the one thing we can't do. We can watch people, and I see people improve all the time. Like when I see lots of plates go on, I'm like, that person's lifting more weight. And I see the mobility change, and I see their demeanor change when they're doing weights. Like a lot of beginners and they're over there squatting, and they just look like it's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
And then a month later, they're just shooting the shit, joking with people, having a good time, lifting more weight than ever.
Yeah.
So I see these improvements in general, but the one thing we can't track is your weight.
Yeah.
Especially the 5s and the 10s and the little ones.
Yeah, I mean, we catch the trends, right? Like, if we're working with somebody who's consistent in our time or whatever, and, we see them, day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, and it's like, why are they still at a 26-pound kettlebell? Like, this person's been here for a while. Like, come on, let's bump up. And like coaches are good, like almost every coach is good at like catching that, like you're moving that weight way too easy. Let me challenge you to go heavier, right? Let me challenge you to go up in this metcon. But in strength, it's a little more difficult, right? Like it's a little more difficult to go up and be like, that back squat, because a 70% back squat and an 80% back squat, from the coach's perspective, look look like they were about as difficult, right? But like the internal struggle that you're feeling is much more significant, obviously, at 80%. And so, like absolutely. If I don't even want to say like if you want to get better, you better track your numbers. It's one of those things where like you joined a CrossFit gym, like this stuff isn't cheap. You're taking a big investment in yourself, right? And if you want to maximize the return on that investment, get a book, get a spreadsheet, put it in your phone, like tweet yourself, like whatever it takes to know that day in and day out you're like what you should lift, and maybe like challenge yourself to start lifting more.
Guessing is not a progress strategy.
Yeah, 100%. And it's your first 3 months, maybe tracking is less important. I would say it's important to know, like, I trained at 95 pounds this day on a back squat. Like back squat, 95 pounds, I did it and I felt good.
Yeah.
Like that's a good thing to track. But like, your second day of CrossFit, saying like I did 16 reps at a barbell, 16 reps at
your
with 2.5.
Your 1 rep max the first time you squat doesn't matter at all.
And so I get caught up on these like strategies of like how to approach the hour that you spend in CrossFit, and how to approach the strength and sort of absorb the most out of it. So we're definitely going to start tracking if we're not tracking. And if we're tracking, we're going to look at ways that we can track more effectively, right? So, maybe going into your warm-up sets. And, honestly, if you're tracking your warm-up sets, you can start to look at how your warm-up sets affected your capacity towards the end. I mean, like when I was swimming, we would warm up for 2 hours, hour and a half before the meet, and then we were expected to warm up probably 45 minutes, 30 minutes before each event, right? Like, and that warm up, obviously we're in the water, so we're not sweating, but that warm up was like sprints, race pace. Like, like if I were in a gym, I would be covered in sweat. Like you watch MMA or you watch these fighters, and they don't come out, like yawning. They come out like covered in sweat, like they're ready to go.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times I've like slacked off on warm up, and then like by the end of the Metcon, I'm like, woo, feeling good. Yep. Let's lift some weight.
Yep.
So I think tracking the warm-ups, I kind of mocked it earlier, but I've talked myself into thinking it's a good idea now.
Well, when I say tracking the warm-ups, it's like if we're building to a heavy 3, I'm not just writing down that last number. If I'm considering like I got 4 working sets in that time, I'm tracking those. I'm not saying barbell 65, 75. That's kind of in parentheses. It's like, all right, this is my starting. This is my official first set. This is my second one. So if we were to say, like in the old way we were programming of going by percentages, I went 60, 70, 80. 60, 70, 80, 90, something like that. That's how I built. Just because I like numbers. So I'm going to kind of correlate it that way versus just saying, I added 5. Maybe for some people, I added 5 pounds, went up 5 pounds, went up 10 pounds each time. Whatever works for you.
So if your goal is to get stronger, which everybody's goal should be to get stronger, then we're going to start tracking. Another thing that, and I'd like actually your guys' input on this, because I'm not sure where you guys might stand on this, but like what's really important is that by the rep scheme sort of defines the weight in a way, right? So if the rep scheme is 3 sets of 12 reps, around that 12th rep, I want to be reaching failure, right? So like, if we're doing 3 by 12 back squat, anyway, just making things up, I want to pick a weight where I can, confidently do 12. But if it's my first working set and I hit 12 and it's pretty easy, maybe I can consider that a warm up, or maybe I can just do 3 or 4 more reps and get to like 15, something like that. So like, the way that I approach the reps is kind of like not a suggestion, but like that's the range I need to be in, like plus or minus, 10% of the reps. So if it's built up to a heavy 5 and it's my first set, maybe I do like 6 or 7. Maybe I count that as a warm up. Maybe I just count that as the first set. But then the next set, adding a little weight, then I hit 5 or 6.
It's a good day if you think you're doing a working set of 5. And you get done with your 5th, and you're like, "Fuck it, let's do 8." That's, I mean.
But it's that idea that you like when I approach strength, I like I don't just want to like rack the bar when I'm still like feeling like super fresh. Like I didn't really like hit any sort of wall.
Well, I think like the cool thing about, the plan to work to a heavy 3 or a heavy 5 is that it's based upon the individual.
Yeah.
We were just talking about, new people, intermediate people, advanced people. And it's such a moving target. And not only are we talking about varying skill levels, but we're talking about how they felt that day and how many wads in a row have they done and how much did they drink last night. And we need to have that leeway for the person to display intensity.
Yeah.
And so, if, it's a heavy 3 and you want to do, the theory would be you rack it and you put more weight on and you do a heavier 3. But
definitely.
If you want to display more athleticism while you're in the gym, feel free.
Yeah. No one's going to yell at you for doing an extra squat or 2.
Yeah.
Like, basically is my point. But it's this idea that like if we're doing a heavy 3 or even if there's percentages, we're not doing percentages at the moment, but if there if it was 70% and that's your first working set and let's say it's 5 by 5 70% or whatever it is and you finish the 5 and you're like that's not a big deal. Well, you probably got a lot stronger since your last one or at max. No. Like do more reps or add more weight. Like make like the point is that fifth rep, while still technically perfect, should be internally miserable. Mm-hmm. Like you should finish rep 4 and be like, oh, all right, here we go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then if you fail on that 5th rep, that's not a big deal either. There's some scenarios where we don't want to ingrain bad habits, especially when we're doing Olympic lifting and stuff. But like when you're more experienced, I'd rather see you like put weight on and go for it, and then fail and then back off a little bit and then succeed. All the different strategies there. But like if you're too conservative, sometimes that can hold you back a little bit. I guess is my point.
Yeah, I think I tried to make a similar point earlier. Just I feel like sometimes you gotta, when the person goes to like chalk up, you sneak a couple 10s on, or my favorite move is switching the wall balls or the dumbbells. Like people never really notice the dumbbells when they're on the ground. Yeah, just switch them out.
Duct tape the 2.5 on each
exactly.
side.
Just jump on their back under a heavy squat. That's
right.
not enough weight. Yeah, dude. Some days you're feeling it, and it strikes me, at 32 as a blessed opportunity.
Right.
The days where I feel great, especially living in this town. This time of year, it's cold. People drink too much.
Yeah.
Maybe the Whole Foods closed early because it was New Year's Eve and I couldn't get my kale salad.
No problem. I just go to my garden.
Yeah.
Kale's a winter shrub.
Winter crop, yeah. So on days where you feel great,
just get after it.
And our coaches, we know, like I said, in some of the notes, if it's a beginner and a heavy, like if somebody been squatting for 2 weeks, a heavy 3 is not that meaningful. So let's get them reps and reps and reps. But yeah, if one of our best athletes is like, you know what, I want a 1 rep max today. Okay. Now, if they did that every day, that's unacceptable, and they're just being silly, and they're not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the general idea is that like what we put on the board is always like a very, very strong suggestion of what you should be doing.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
But like, if you're injured, if you're not feeling good, if like something's a little off, like if your shoulder's just like. The other thing I said, like coaching is a 2-way street. Like with everybody we work with. It's injury. All right, cool. Let's work on this. Let's do this. Let's modify here. Like if you don't communicate to the coach, we can't improve your experience in the gym. We can't improve your ability as an athlete, right? Like after the workout, like I was working with somebody yesterday, and it was a 30-minute AMRAP, and maybe a shoulder problem or elbow problem or something, and so like a little lighter on the dumbbells. Afterwards, she was like, I didn't quite get to where I wanted to go. It's like, that's why we have assault bikes. and then like we got to work on it, not a big deal. But now I know her better as an athlete. Now next time I know that she can handle, 15 pounds instead of 10, 12 and a half, whatever. Now we like start to edge up. But as coaches, we're always going to err on the side of lighter, and we're always going to err on the side of fewer reps, and we're basically going to err on the side of living to fight another day.
All we want is athletes to show up tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's all we want.
And then once we get to know you as an athlete, then we're going to start to nudge you. And then, a friendly nudge from a coach, outside of Jason who just puts weight on your bar.
Indiscriminately.
That's right. A friendly nudge from a coach is like to you. It should be kind of mental permission to like go heavy. Like we're not going to recommend you put 20 pounds on the bar if you're like borderline with where you're at. It's like that looks super easy. Put 20 pounds on the bar. Like I know you've got this. Now you have to know that you've got this before you've got this, right? So like, and that's what I mean by like coaching's a two-way street. Like, hey, I want to, like, I'm not feeling too good. Is it all right if I like don't go as heavy, but I do some more reps? Hell yeah. Let's do that. What do you think? A 5x5? Or you want to do 10x10? You know, like, well, like
If I'm not feeling well, that's what I'll do is just to...
Yeah. So like, if you're an athlete and you want to get more out of the strength and you don't feel like a certain day was, you know, like connected to with you like another day did, then, you know, talk to your coach about it. Send us an email like after class.
I think that's what is going to be good about the, you know, heavy 3s, heavy 5s that we're going to be doing is that I feel like some people, and, you know, by going by percentages, that they felt like they had to do that. Well, it was listed 5 at this, 3 at this, you know, heavy 2s, and either they didn't have enough time for it, or they were like, but it says that's what I have to do, and so they felt like they had to do what was listed. It's like, no,
Right.
go off it. So now we say heavy 3, heavy 5, it's relative to the time available, to how you're feeling, to your mobility, how much you drink, you know, anything like that.
Yeah.
So it might not be, you know, most likely not a, you know, 3 rep max, 5 rep max. Maybe it is in the cards that day, maybe not. It's just, you know, what you have the ability to do.
Yeah.
For 3 reps that time.
It's still a pretty strong suggestion though.
Sure. No, I agree. I agree. It is. And
It's that line where, you know, like you both saying, it's not totally freeform, but you know, it is dependent on you in that day. And I hate the idea that everybody's a special snowflake. I rally against that idea constantly. But yeah, some days, you know, you just need to do what is within your means.
Yeah.
But again, that if you approach it every day that way,
Right.
that's a recipe for failure.
Yeah, exactly. Like one thing I recommend a lot of people to do is like when they're developing consistency, show up on a day that you would have otherwise taken off. Like show up on a day where you feel just crushed. And I don't phone it in, like, you know, don't try, you know, do bad technique, but like go lighter than you normally go, you know, do more reps at lower weight if we're doing strength than you normally do. Show up and treat it as like an active recovery. You're going to get more out of that day than you would out of your couch. Mm-hmm. You know, now there's some days, obviously, like I don't want to see people, maybe I do, every single day, 7 days a week, every single month. Like you're going to break your body down. You need that recovery.
Yep.
But I was just reading this book by Jocko Willink, Discipline Equals Freedom, and it's all about like the way to success and happiness is just forcing yourself to do the right things, right? Like wake up, do 100 burpees, you know, don't eat sugar, it's poison. Like, how do I not eat sugar? Well, don't eat sugar, right? And then he was talking about, well, how do I like, what's his approach to working out every day, every morning? So he wakes up 4:30 every morning and he goes and he works out. And he says, occasionally your body's going to break down, right? Occasionally it's going to break down. But he wakes up, and on the day that he wakes up and he feels like garbage, he trains that day and then takes the next day off, right? So it's like the next day he takes off, but he never gives himself permission to be weak in that moment. And, you know, whatever, he's a pretty intense guy, and that certainly works for him. But I think like we can all take part of that approach. And when we wake up on a day that's especially a strength day, wake up on a strength day and be like, oh man, I feel a little tired, but maybe today will be good for me. And show up to the gym, do the warm-up, and then see how you feel.
Yeah.
building on that a little bit is that with the strength days is that we're going to have 5 strength days. 5 out of the 7 days are going to be strength, and that's including the gains club. That's including one of those days, and including the day that we do.
Sunday at 11.
Sunday at 11, yep. And, we're going to have the 1 day a week, Monday through Friday, that's going to be strength for the whole hour.
Yeah.
And this is going to be published. Like, what we're doing for strength will be published. So I caution against cherry picking. But if you want to focus on your snatch, try to pick those days. It's great that people like to be surprised and just show up to the gym, and because that's what gets them there. Otherwise, they wouldn't go if they don't look at the board.
Yeah.
But I think it helps me mentally prepare, knowing what I have to do going in, because then I can maybe get in a little bit earlier, get more of an overhead workout, warm up and then spend on my hips
Right.
if it was like a deadlift or back squats, because I know my overhead mobility needs work, so I can spend more time there. So when it says heavy 3 overhead squats, I can crush it at a sweet 75 versus just barely getting the 45-pound bar.
Yeah, 100%.
And to go back to your point with the Navy SEAL dude, I mean, I think it's important everybody understand too that we three, as well as most CrossFit coaches, function a little bit differently than your average CrossFit member. I mean, we all have a history of athletics. We do hard things, and when I say maybe you're not feeling it that day, I mean you're incredibly low energy level. But generally, I just mean that your shoulder's really banged up.
Yeah,
or
for sure.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Don't train through that.
Be smart.
Yeah.
But if you just had a long day at work, find that Starbucks and then show up to Old City.
That's right.
It's athleticism and fitness is a difficult thing.
Right.
And I don't know about Jocko over here waking up at 4:30 and being having bronchitis and saying, well, I'll take tomorrow off. But
He would.
But if I'm just a little fatigued or a little stressed, or a little my hamstrings are sore, I'm sure a lot of the new people, they don't know what soreness is and what's okay.
Right.
I mean, shit, I surprise myself when I'm sore too.
Yeah.
There are days where I'm everything hurts.
Yeah.
Not injury hurt, but everything's sore, and I come in and I crush it.
Yeah.
So
the soreness thing is really important to me, right? Because you can't feel the pain of soreness while you're moving, and so if you want the soreness to feel better for a minute, just do squats, And so and I see this a lot from sort of onboarding people and getting people into the gym. They show up, they crush a workout, they did great, they absolutely knocked it out of the park. And I don't see them for a week. Hey, what happened? They're like, I was sore. All right, cool. Well, let's fight through that soreness and let's get into it. And so then the next week, oh man, I got sore again. Damn it. You got to fight through that. You got to plow through that.
As everybody knows, black coffee and some Biggie, and then you just do it.
Black coffee and Biggie.
Yeah.
It was all a dream.
It was all a dream.
My soreness. I don't.
Yeah.
So here we are at this point where it's indefinable. But I mean, maybe one of the bigger points we can make is that doing CrossFit will teach you a lot about yourself and what you're capable of. And if we go back to our very first, my very first starting strength quote of the podcast, I mean, in the final analysis, this is a physical existence. And you learn a lot about yourself from your energy levels and your soreness and stuff. The more I read, the more, there's, very nuanced ways of testing if your central nervous system is capable of lifting that day, It's relative to a baseline box jump, a lot of people think, or possibly.
HRV.
HRV is the next thing I was going to bring up if you want to track it. But I think that assuming that you're not devastatingly sick and assuming that you're not in real, unilateral pain, if it's both legs or both shoulders, you're fine. But if
you can break both legs and still lift.
Yeah, but if it's one knee, and it's bad, maybe come into the coach and say, I'm going to do, because we always have tools for people who have one shoulder or one knee. But point being is that it's a difficult pursuit, and we want people to show up.
Yeah. And I think to that end of showing up, it's so Jen was saying we have 5 strength sessions during the week. That's including the Sunday. So Sunday, 11 o'clock, that's the hour and a half, full bore strength focus. That's a really important class if anybody's if your goal is, kind of general fitness and you kind of want to get stronger, but you don't have an agenda. It's not I want to get stronger as fast as possible. You just want to live life, work out. Totally fine. We'll get you there, right? That road will be a lot longer than if you approach this super systematically, right? If you want to get as strong as you can, as fast as possible through the Old City system, then you're looking at all the days that we have strength, you're marking your calendar, you're getting amped, you're laying out your gym clothes, you're going to bed thinking about what you're going to lift tomorrow, you're logging everything, and you're showing up to every single day that we have strength. And yeah, you're probably showing up to a few days where we do some like crushing metcons too, because you know that in order to be strong, you have to have endurance, and that's super important too. So you're basically here all the time, and that's great. You're gonna get super strong.
Then you're holding the pigeon while you watch Netflix.
That's right.
And you're in a paleo chair every time you drink a glass of wine.
But that's actually, we kind of joke about that, but that's a super important thing. So like when you come home after a really brutal lifting session or CrossFit workout, like what are you doing at home that's going to fuel your better performance the next day, right? Like recovery starts, yeah, we do mobility at the end of class, but like mobility continues. You know, if all you're doing is focusing on your fitness for 1 hour out of the day, even if you're working out 7 days a week, which is a lot. That's only 7 out of 168.
Yeah,
that's not a lot of hours.
We're talking about the mobility to snatch, and a snatch, you holding the barbell overhead.
Right.
How often in your day to day do you put your hands over your head?
Right.
You think that literally you're just going to have your hands in front of you, shaking hands, holding steering wheels, holding drinks on keyboards.
That's right.
And then for 15 minutes, once every other week, you're going to be able to hold 200 pounds overhead.
Anytime you want to look at Instagram, fully externally rotate.
And he selfies gotta be.
So
That's right.
Yeah, I mean it's a constant pursuit.
Yeah. And so when I think about recovery, and then I'm curious how you guys kind of approach the recovery angle. When I think about recovery, the first thing I want to do is just make sure that my body feels good. So if I lift pretty hard or if I work out pretty hard, like I tend to feel it in my knees and in my low back. So I'm going to spend a lot of extra time in the gym, on the foam roller, on lacrosse balls, on the reverse hyper, getting my body feeling good before I go home. Yeah. Then when I go home, I'm going to eat. We can dive into like nutrition stuff because that's super important. But then I'm going to try to like keep that body feeling good. So maybe some couch stretch while I'm watching Netflix. Maybe it's like push the couch aside and make some space for the foam roller. Maybe it's a lacrosse ball. Whatever's not feeling good, that's what I'm attacking, right? Yeah. I'm never sitting down after I've worked out a few times, period. I've never come home and just had everything feel good, so you can always oh man, that doesn't quite feel 100%. That doesn't feel 100%. And that gives you an idea of what to attack. And if you're following along at home, and you have no idea what to do about something that doesn't quite feel right, like that's what we're here for. Like shoot us an email, see us in the gym. We live for making you feel better in your body, right? So man, those squats, my right knee isn't quite up to speed. That's going to tell us a few things. One, all right, now we got to watch out for the right knee, but what's causing that pain? Typically, it's not a dysfunctional knee. Typically, it's a hip issue or a hamstring issue or a calf issue or something upstream and downstream. So now we're getting to a deeper root of what's holding you back as an athlete. Yeah, sure, the knee hurts right now, but that anytime that we see a pain in an athlete, as a coach, we kind of get excited about that because that's an opportunity for us to make you a better athlete. Like, oh wow, your body is telling us that there's a problem that needs to be solved. Let's figure that out, right? Yeah. And so attacking everything that doesn't feel good, making sure that you're getting enough protein, vegetables, carbs. If you're really crushing it, nothing wrong with a little scoop of rice as long as it doesn't affect the system. Just having a really whole food, well-balanced meal after the workout for breakfast, making sure that you're eating, and then sleep. Sleep is so important. Sleep is when you get stronger, right? Right. Strength is when you provide the stimulus, but sleep is when you get stronger. Yep. So, I mean, a cool 8 hours, sometimes 10 if I hope Jocko's not listening. 4.5. 4.5. Wake up at 4:30. Train again.
Who doesn't work from home at this point, right? We all can sleep at 10.
Yeah.
Just me.
Just me.
Wow. Hey, I'm committed.
Any other ideas on like recovery type stuff? Anything that you guys do that
Pretty much mirrors what you said. Is I try to, and that's one reason we program mobility. It's not just usually suggestions. Sometimes we'll just say fielder's choice because we know you're going to be wrecked. So do something that helps you in general. But we try to program, like a warm up, like the strength, like the Metcon, program a mobility, something to help you feel less shitty when you leave the gym because you're just broken down. Everyone's laying on the ground, all right, lay on a foam roller, do something localized, take care of that quad or that shoulder that you just did a bunch of work on. Walk out, feeling a little less, a little better than what you just did 5 minutes prior. Hopefully you have a protein shake you can drink along the way, so you're starting to feel those muscles that are broken down, and then just keep eating, keep drinking, like stay hydrated. And if you mentioned sitting or try not to sit, a lot of people are going to a job where they're sitting for 8 hours. Maybe every 30 minutes, every 45, get up and walk, get up and stretch. There's a lot of stretches we do where you
Sitting's the new smoking.
Yep.
Is the new sugar, is the new...
It's the new black, it's the new orange. Orange is the new, what is the...
Yeah, but just, stay hydrated, and my biggest thing is sleep, is I just don't sleep, but I try to counter that by, not counter, but, help it by keeping stress low, have a better nighttime routine of, getting off the electronics, wearing my sweet blue blocking glasses.
Yeah.
And...
Wait, do you think the glasses work better than the filters you can download?
I do both.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, filters.
So that's twice.
So what color?
Yeah.
What color is it to you?
It's just like
it's just green.
Tan.
Oh,
It's
there's
tan.
the app Flux. Is that the app? That's the app
I use Twilight.
I just use blue light. I just put it on.
So for those of the people listening who have no idea what we're talking about,
it just goes that and then even lower. And then I put my orange glasses on.
awesome.
It looks the same. It's like this color.
Yeah.
so like your what is circadian
Circadian,
rhythm or whatever is linked to the sun, and so the sun comes up, you see the blue sky, that triggers a lot of wake up things to happen, and then when the sun goes down, that triggers a lot of sleep things to happen, melatonin production, a lot of other stuff. I'm not the sleep scientist, just read a few articles on it, but the idea is that the more blue light you get later in the day, especially after the sun sets, the harder it'll be to fall asleep. So typically, like orange lens glasses,
Orange yellow, yeah.
Orange yellow lens glasses block the blue light so that you can get your technology on, check out Facebook, be on Twitter, all those things, but not necessarily get the harmful sleep side effects. But we'll do another podcast on sleep. Sleep's super important.
Yeah.
But you should be really focused about sleep.
Yeah, the human's a strange animal, a very unique animal. I mean, we're literally the only creature on the planet that doesn't adhere to the sun cycle. And I mean, right now, the sun's only out like, what, 8 hours? Well, I don't know how many hours.
Feels like 8 hours.
Yeah, if it was
like
for those of us
like
for those of us who wake up at 9:30 every day, it feels like the sun's out at like 5 hours.
Jason Standard Time.
Yeah, I sell beer and coach fitness, so that's what I do in the evenings. I don't want to dive too much into nutrition, and I guess we're maybe wrapping up here, but nutrition is a whole nother podcast. But to kind of echo what you both said about eating, it's that we've been talking about strength, and the most important thing I think to bring to the conversation about nutrition with regards to strength is that it's much easier to build strength when you've got a surplus of calories.
Yeah.
There's lots of different diets that we could talk about: macros, low carb, paleo, Whole30, etc. I don't want to talk about that right now, but a lot of people in their minds, the same people who want to come in and just feel that lactic burn and just kind of jog through CrossFit, that kind of 80s mentality, they're not probably eating enough. And you don't want to eat so much that, you gain that big old belly. But if you want to be strong, a caloric deficit is not going to do it.
Yeah, 100%.
I tell people all the time at Sunday Dance Club, go eat and eat plenty. It's much easier to get strong when you've got that backing.
And then it's a lot easier to lose weight when you're super strong, right?
What?
Like
it's
if you had 20 pounds of muscle, then you're going to burn a lot more calories. Your resting metabolic rate, or whatever that term is, it's going to be a lot higher than it is if you have no muscle. So,
and within CrossFit, I feel like not only if you were just squatting and just eating and sleeping 10 hours a day, you get strong as shit.
Yeah.
But in reality, in CrossFit, we also have all these WODs and all these Metcons that are going to burn so many. I don't like to talk about burning calories, but point being is you're not going to gain a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So, if you're in a CrossFit program, I wouldn't be too concerned about eating too much.
Yeah. And so I think to sort of, I guess, summarize this this whole discussion on strength in CrossFit, if like I think it's really important for everyone to kind of have a goal, right? We just made that goals PR board. I think it's important for everybody to be working towards something, even if your goal is just to be healthier, lose a little weight, get more fitness. It's important to have a goal tied to it so that you wake up and you're motivated and you're inspired to do something that advances, you closer to fitness, right? Like fitness, I want to be more fit. That works in January, but it may not work in August. You know what I'm saying? Like you lose that motivation. But picking something, and what I like to say is like you should know your strongest lift and your weakest lift, and then endeavor to make your weakest lift your strongest lift, and then repeat. Right? If you have a 200-pound snatch and a 250-pound deadlift, well, spending 8 hours a week on the nuances of like your third pull in the snatch is not going to yield you as much benefit as doing a lot of accessory work on your posterior chain to improve your deadlift. So find your weakness and make that your strength. Repeat. New weakness, new strength. Repeat. New weakness, new strength. Gymnastics strength, powerlifting strength, Olympic lifting strength, like just quirky odd strength, like can you lift a keg? Can you, are you doing 100-pound D-ball shoulders? Like focus on your weaknesses, make your weaknesses your strength, and I think that's always a good starting point for picking a goal. I don't know what y'all's closing thoughts are.
Closing thoughts?
Or just thoughts in general. We don't have to close.
Yeah, man.
We can do this all day.
Get strong, lift weights. And I maybe one thing too that I always like the big picture things. I always try to like to simplify it. For example, I brought Sean a book today called The Omnivore's Dilemma. It's about nutrition, but at the same time, it's not about nutrition. It's about the history of eating, and why big picture we've become unhealthy. It's anthropology, right? Yeah. Point being is that, in terms of lifting, we talk about percentages and we talk about heavy 3 and what you feel like that day. Instead of being worried so much about, the percentages, did you squat 100 times this year?
Yeah.
I would make that my goal is to, if I have a weakness and I want to be better at it, to your point, maybe 100 times is aggressive for some of the lifts, but did you snatch 75 times this year?
Yeah.
So it's big picture. If you're worried about which supplement's going to help your squat,
creatine,
more
protein.
more than just getting into the gym, putting weights on the bar.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right? Well, you say of course, but I don't think a lot of people get that.
That's a good point. Yeah, if you take branched chain amino acids and don't lift, you won't get stronger.
Yeah. So, my goal would be to, I don't know what my specific goal is. It probably has to do more with running than I'd like to admit at our strength podcast. But, did I pursue my running goals 100 times this year?
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah. That's a really good, and then you can break that 100 times per year down to how much per month, how much per week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as a more digestible goal.
Yeah,
did I do this twice this week?
Yeah, if my goal is to do, whatever, this many times per week, that means each week I got to squat twice. I got to be in the gym, whatever, squatting twice per week. Or I need to, whatever. Like, you break it down into super tangible check boxes. Did I do it, yes or no? Like if your goal is to finish a 1,000-page book, well, did I read 5 pages today? No? Well, you're not going to read that book, or as quickly as you would if you did.
Yeah. But if you didn't read 5 pages today, you would just read 20 pages next week.
That's right.
So, squatting 7 times a week, not recommended to reach your 100. Well, they squat every day. Plenty of podcasts squat. Any point being is that, big picture, get it done.
And I think to this book analogy that's probably dragged on way too long, you can read 30 pages of a book and be totally fine the next day, right? But you can't put 5 squat training days on one day and then get the same result, right? So strength, unique to a lot of other goals, literally requires long-term consistency. The day in, day out grind, because your body, you're creating an adaptation in your body. Stimulus, response, and over and over and over you go.
Yeah. building on what you said there is just consistency. Show
Yeah.
up. If you want to get stronger, show up.
Yep.
Even if you're not feeling it, show up. You might surprise yourself during warm up, and it might, turn out to be one of your better days when
Yeah.
you're not feeling 100%.
I wish we had started the podcast with this, because if people don't make it through the full hour and a half, we spent a little bit talking about reasons why you wouldn't
No, we
show
need to
up.
give an Easter egg now, so they gotta
that's
email
right.
us something,
Yeah.
so we know they made it through.
A smiley face or something.
Lift weights, kids.
That's
Lift
right.
weights.
Get strong. On that note, if you have any questions, comment on our Facebook page, shoot us an email, see us in the gym. Let us know if we were confusing on anything, if anything needs to be clarified. We can happily jump back on and create some more clarity. But I think what should be crystal clear from this are the following takeaways. Be consistent with your training. Show up, get it done. Track what you do in training, and pay attention to recovery. Like, make sure that you're mobilizing what needs to be mobilized. Make sure you're focused on sleep and nutrition. And if you do all of those things, you will get stronger. You will, there is no way to not get stronger if that's what you're doing. And if you hit a plateau, and if you get frustrated or injury, there's a million things that can get in the way. That's why you have coaches, right? You don't join a gym for access to equipment. Well, you don't join Old City for access to equipment. You're joining a gym for access to the wealth of knowledge in the coaches, right? And if we don't know answers, we all have mentors that, have been coaching longer than us, that know more than us, and we talk about these things with each other. So, I don't want to say we're not going to lead you astray, but we'll do our best to lead you stray. Lead you stray.
Yes.
Whatever.
Stray means homeless?
I don't.
Yeah.
We will lead you homeless,
You might squat 400, but...
but no home. But you'll be harder to kill.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Later, guys.
See ya.